Welcome to the Catbird Quilts. I'm Kathy Martin, and today I have a quilt story for you, and it's a little bit of a throwback to an early quilt that I made, but it's got a brother coming soon, and so I wanted to go on and tell you about it, and I have a lot to say about it, so stay with me. So if you've watched any of my previous videos, or some of them, you may have heard that my day job, I'm a pharmacist. And I recently changed to a new pharmacy, but my former pharmacy manager is one of the loveliest people you will ever meet. And I have all the love in my heart for her. And recently found out that she is adding to her family. She's got a baby boy coming very soon. And so, of course, that means that I have a new baby quilt to make, which they're my favorite. They're absolutely my favorite. And in talking to her about her color choices for baby boy, who has no name at this point. He's coming in 2 months, by the way. So in talking about the colors for the nursery and all that kind of stuff, it made me realize I never did a quilt story on my pharmacy manager's firstborn daughter. So my pharmacy manager's name is Jenn, and we worked together for, I think, a little over 5 years, which is a long time in the corporate retail pharmacy world to be partnered with someone for that long and have no changes. So we really got to know each other very well. And when we found out that she was having baby number 1, a baby girl, I immediately was like, well, I'm going to make you a baby quilt. And had not been quilting that long. So of course I volunteered something that I wasn't really even sure how to do well. Yet I had made my first quilt and I had made my second quilt for my friend Tiffany, and I had not finished it. So I stopped the one project, which isn't this what we do, and moved on to Jenn's baby quilt. And so I had asked her, what do you think you want? And she is one of the most agreeable people in the world. She just wants to be agreeable, and she is. And she says, thank you far more than it's needed, but always appreciated. And so I was sitting around thinking about, which is what I do about quilts, sitting around thinking about quilts and thinking about Jenn and thinking about our friendship and working relationship. And we used to laugh about working together because we would come in and I would come into for the evening shift, and we would be wearing almost the same outfit. And I've said this for many years. I don't know what it is about me, but I like to buy gray pants. And I like to buy gray pants at the thrift store. So I have a slew of gray pants, and I either put a white shirt with it or a black shirt with it, as I'm wearing today. And I would come into work and Jenn would be wearing gray pants and a black shirt, or black pants and a gray shirt. And we used to laugh about it, that was kind of our uniform at work, even though we didn't have a uniform. So I thought about Jenn, and I thought about us, and I thought about her lovely home, which has a lot of gray in it. And I'm like, I know what to do. I know what to do. So I made this plan that I was going to make a gray and white quilt. And that may sound sad and depressing. But, if done well, gray can be really lovely. And I thought to myself that maybe that would go with any decor. So no matter what color she chose, no matter what theme she chose, she ended up choosing vintage Winnie the Pooh, which, my gosh, love that. And so I had this kind of thought, well, gray and white is lovely by itself, but gray and white and golden yellow is actually such a great combination. So now got the color scheme, or at least an idea for the color scheme, what to do. Again, I say I had not been quilting very long, and the one and only pattern or book of patterns that I had was the Sunday Morning Quilts book, which I have referenced excessively on this channel. But honestly, it's because it's what I had, and I had not quite delved into the world of online patterns at that point. And I found a pattern in that book called High Five. And really what it is, it's a square within a square. The construction of it is really like the first round of a log cabin quilt. So you start with a square, mirror that square, and then bar, 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 and then you have a little square. And I had the idea, I'll make all gray squares with white squares in the center, and it might look kind of polka dot from a distance. Started gathering up my grays, had some fat quarters from here and there, had a lot of shirts, a lot of gray men's shirts out there, by the way. So if you're looking to do anything with gray, start at the thrift store. You will not be disappointed, I don't think. So I gathered up all my grays and laid them out on the floor and realized there are about 20 different color variations of gray. There's the pinky gray, there's the purpley gray, there's greeny gray, which you wouldn't think. There's the grays that are gray but are really brown once you get them up against other grays. There are grays that have blue tinge in them. And so I got them all out and kind of picked ones that I thought would go together. And I was already starting to learn that you need some darker ones, you need some lighter ones. Of course, I have gingham, got to use the gingham. Had a gray that to me looks like birch tree bark that I absolutely wanted to use. Had a really interesting plaid, and so on and so forth. So I just made a bunch of gray squares with a little white square on the center. And I sized it down a little bit. I didn't want it to look big and clunky. So I started with a 2-inch square, which left me with a 1.5-inch square finished, and just made a bunch of them. When I got that done and was, so pleased with myself, I realized I had not thought through the layout. So I'm going to spread the quilts out and let you see what I did. So here it is. Here's the completed quilt. I did make a layout with it. The one in the center is actually mirrored in all 4 corners as well. So it's the 4 corners, and in the center is that one that has a slight brown cast to it. And then this one at the very top, which I did on each side, basically I have each quadrant is the same. So it's symmetrical across and through. This one was far more complicated than I thought. I did not think that was a very hard plaid to work with. And in the context of the grays, it wasn't too bad, but it has a little bit of a blue cast. This one that's right here has the slightest kind of purpley. It's in the purpley pinky family. And then this one right here, which is actually, I have this turned the wrong way because it's trees. So it's not going to look like trees from this vantage point. But the white in it is actually a little on the yellow side. And then I have 2 different ginghams. I have a little micro gingham here and then kind of a regular gingham here. And you can see there's just a lot of variation in the gray, which is great because it doesn't look like just one solid color. It was a little bit of a challenge putting that together in a way that to me made sense and bridged from one to the other. So going into this kind of pinky, wild, spirally gray, I needed a jump from here to here. So that's how that came to be. Quite a few shirts. So there's a lot of plaid in it. I just sat on the floor and did Tetris with squares, which is not hard. I wanted it to be a symmetrical, pleasing visual, like your eyes land at a pleasant place as you're looking at it. And again, I was still kind of new to the process, kind of putting it together and arranging. I had not had that experience where it's like, oh, wait, no, that doesn't go next to that. Let me move this over here. Or if I put this here and this here, then it's duplicated over here. So that's how that kind of came to be. I went to all of my various fabric stores and ended up with this golden mustard yellow fabric, which I wanted to use for the back. I'm going to show you that. And it is covered in very teeny tiny little white flowers and like a leaf, viney floral pattern outlined in gray. So up close, it is just really almost the perfect combination of white and gray and yellow. And then I got ready to do the binding, and I was just going to do this solid yellow. I actually bought 2 different solids. And when I did it, it was so stark and bright that it looked like I had taken French's mustard and squirted it along the edge of the quilt. So in a unusual move for me, I used the same fabric as for the back as the binding. And what it did in the process, hopefully you can see that, but obviously ties the front to the back. But from the front, you just get this little touch of yellow. And I talked to Jenn about this. Actually, yesterday, I went to borrow the quilt so I could do this quilt story. And we laughed about that yellow because it ended up being my favorite part of the quilt, and hers too, and her mother's. Her mom said to her when I gave this to her, "Did you pick that yellow?" And she said, "Oh no, Kathy did that." And she goes, "I love it." We just all kind of had this like, oh, it was just that wonderful serendipitous thing when you get the perfect marriage of a nice bright up against the neutrals. We laughed about it when I gave it to her, and we laughed again yesterday about Jenn's love of gray and white and my understanding of her, and how when you know someone really well and when you care about them deeply, it's not hard to make a quilt for them. Once I had the original idea, I never spoke to her about this quilt again until I gave it to her, because I knew her and I knew she would love it. I mean, even with the imperfections, and even with, you know, if my piecing is off or if some of the colors are not exactly right, I knew she would love it, and she loved it. And she said, when we were talking about it and about the quilt that is to come, she said, "Oh, you know me. You know me. Just do what you want. Just do what you think I'll like, and I will probably like it." And what a wonderful partnership that we had. And then kind of in this way, this is like it's like evidence of the great partnership that we had working together, because I knew what she would love. And let's just face it, when you're making a baby quilt, you're not making a baby quilt. You're making a mom quilt, a future mom quilt. This baby is not a baby anymore. She's 18 months old, and she's going to be an adult one day. And hopefully she ends up having fond memories of this quilt and loves it and has fondness. But this quilt was not for Jenn's daughter. It's for Jenn. And the quilt for her baby boy coming in October is not for baby boy. It's for Jenn too. And I love that. I love that about baby quilts, because you can make something sweet, and sometimes small is just like smaller pieces, or small details are very appreciated and kind of go with the theme. But really, we're making mom quilts. We're making mother to be quilts. I do want to add, for those of you that have wondered about how quilts hold up if they've been made with shirts, this is now almost 2 years old. She uses it on the reg. They used it for tummy time when baby girl was a baby. And then as she's now gotten bigger and she's a toddler and before long preschooler, they use it in the stroller. She keeps it in the car. She keeps it in the car all the time. So when they go places, she has a little blanket for the stroller. She actually told me that they had a photo shoot, a family photo shoot, and it had rained the evening before. And so the ground was wet. And the photographer said, "Do you have something that you can put down that she can sit on?" And Jenn was like, "Why, yes. Yes, I do." And I love that. And so she has washed it. She has not dried it because she did not want to mess it up. And I was like, "Please dry it." I dried it. I washed it and dried it. And so we had a whole conversation about that. But there is no evidence of any wear and tear at all. All of the piecing is exactly like it was. None of the seams are splitting. There's no tears in it. And they used it. They're using it. I wanted to comment briefly on the quilting itself. Because this was early on, I had not had a quilt professionally quilted, long arm quilted at this point. And I wanted to do something more than just straight lines or the crosshatch pattern. And so I just took the plunge and did free motion quilting, even though I did not know what I was doing. And so what I did a little, it's like a loop on a loop. So it's a little loop and then a circle around the loop and then to the next. And so what I did while I was quilting this and swearing and trying not to be perfectionistic, I just used the squares as my guide for how to do the actual quilt design. So I started in the corner and I went loop and then circle and then loop and then circle all the way across. And what that did, that ended up putting like it's almost like a little balloon in the center of all of the squares. And actually, so there's three balloons, because essentially it makes almost like a 9-patch. And it gives those little centers a little bit of puff, which I really like. I think it's kind of fun. And I, again, kind of stumbled on it. It was not, I planned it. Obviously, I didn't just sit down and totally wing it, but I didn't know how well it would crinkle up and puff up once I washed it. So that was my first adventure in free motion quilting. It can be fun, and especially on this size quilt, it's not burdensome with the weight or managing a huge quilt. I don't love the quilting part, but quilting a baby quilt is actually fun, and I feel like I can exert some creativity there. So that is quilt number 3 that I made. I've not done this before, but I remember being a young mom and having blankets and wanting to use them with the stroller and not having something to anchor it into the stroller, or having, like a towel or whatever, and nowhere to put it when your hands are full. So I actually got some bias tape and made little hanging loops on 2 of the corners so that if she washed it or needed to hang it up, she could just hang it on the loop or hang it on the handle of the stroller. And I asked Jenn whether she used it. She said yes, and they have held up pretty well. I'm not sure if it was really as functional as I wanted it to be. Again, Jenn might be the most agreeable person I've ever met, so she probably wouldn't tell me if she didn't use them. But anyway, so that's it's not my baby quilt, my former pharmacy manager and great friend, her baby daughter's quilt. And now we've got baby boy coming, and I'm already plotting and scheming for that quilt. We'll see how that goes. And I'm sure we'll have a quilt story about that before long as well. Thanks for being with me today. Thanks for listening to my quilt story. If you're interested, we'll put a link to the Sunday Morning Quilts book. The pattern that I modified a little to do this pattern is High Five. And I encourage you to check it out. There's a lot of variation that you can do with that quilt pattern and make it your own. I'm Kathy Martin. This is the Catbird Quilts. Thanks so much for watching.